everybody, this is Matt and we're at Texas Toast Guitars. Thanks for watching. This is the very first in a video series that we are calling How to Make Your Guitar Play Great in 2024. And the purpose of these videos is how you can take any guitar that you have and make it play as good as it can possibly play in 2024. And we're going to be covering some very basic guitar setup tools and tips and tricks that are going to make it possible for you to maybe avoid giving money to the guitar tech in your area. And most of those guys don't know what they're doing anyway. No, I'm kidding. Those guys are all good. But there's some of this stuff that you guys can do yourself. Okay, you know what I mean? So in the first video, we're going to talk about truss rods and how to adjust them and what it means to adjust them and why you shouldn't be scared to adjust your truss rod. We're going to be using this Texas Toast Challenger Level 2 for part of the video, but we're also going to be using some other, some actual truss rods. I'm going to show you what they look like out of the guitar and then show you how to adjust some of the major brands that you know and love. And I'm going to also show you some tools that you can get at the sponsor of these videos, Stuart McDonald, some tools you can get to make your life easier. Okay, so let's jump right in. So what I have in my hands here is a 3/16 piece of steel rod. Now this is what most truss rods are actually made out of. Sometimes it's just the one piece of steel rod. Sometimes it's a piece of steel rod with a flat piece attached to the bottom of it. But usually what it is it looks something like this. It's got a stop, or in this case this rod has just been bent to keep it from moving this way. So this would get drilled, a hole would get drilled in the neck and this would fit in there and it would prevent the rod from twisting this way. And it usually is put in an arched channel and there is a nut on one side. This could be the headstock side or it could be the heel side, depending on the neck that you have, and the washer that was on there just flew off. I need to get that. But so the reason that I show you guys what these look like is not to say this rod is better than that rod and that rod is the best and etc. There are people that will tell you this is the best rod for tone transfer and that. Again, the purpose of this video isn't to try and decide what the best truss rod is. The purpose of this video is to let you know that when people say, oh, I could never adjust my own truss rod, what if I break it? Well, how in the world do you think you could break this? I'm not saying you can't. I'm not daring you to break this. But this is a hardened, well, this is just a hard piece of steel. It's actually mild steel. It's not hardened. But you're not going to break the truss rod. This acorn nut that's on here is a brass nut. You could probably strip the threads on the truss rod. These are 1032 threads to match this acorn nut here. There's a couple of different other styles of nut that you could attach to this. One of my more popular videos was where I took an old school truss rod and I didn't twist the rod, but I unscrewed the nut that was on here and I screwed a new wheel adjust truss rod nut onto a fender style neck, and that was popular. So anyway, that's basically what is essentially makes up a truss rod. So you have this old school, one of the classic styles here. Let's see, what else do we have? I also have a truss rod. This one here is just a very, very basic truss rod. Now the purpose of this is a two-piece rod, but as you can see, let's see, we could absolutely thread this nut onto this two-piece rod here and it would do exactly the same thing. The nut is not soldered on, so this rod only does one thing, and that is bow in the direction that it's designed to bow in, but it does not bow the other way. The truss rods that we use they look very similar to that. In fact, I have one here without the blue shrink wrap on it. This is the same kind of rod. It's got a different style nut, and it's got a 4mm Allen key on the inside, but it is absolutely threaded on the inside. I'm going to show you what this looks like here in a minute. So the rod does two things, and we're gonna deep dive into that. But it doesn't matter what kind of truss rod you have, you can absolutely adjust it yourself. What if you are a Paul Reed Smith fan? Then your truss rod might look something like this, where the nut is actually soldered onto a right-hand thread on this end, and there's a left-hand thread on this end, and there's two blocks that prevent it from moving side to side. And you can bow the rod up, or you can bow it down, depending on which way you move the, which way you adjust the rod. So let's take a quick peek here at what I've got my truss rod, my handy truss rod tool here. You know what? Let's start with that. Let's start with this guy, so I can show you what I'm driving at, if it fits in my truss rod jig. All right, I've got my truss rod, my surrogate neck set up here, and what I've done is I've relieved a bunch of this in the middle so you can watch what the truss rod does. This is an old school truss rod, and it's got a piece of 3/16 round stock on the bottom and a piece of 1/4 inch flat stock on top, and it's brazed together on this side, and there's a loop on the other side, but the nut is not. This nut is not captive, and I've got a nut here that we're going to thread onto the end, and then we are going to go ahead and tighten it a little more, and you can watch what happens. You can actually see the rod make kind of a frowny face. It's higher here than it is in the center. Which what that would do is, if you installed the rod this way, it would counteract the string tension of your guitar, and it would flatten your neck while it was strung up. Okay, so look, you can see here. Now as I loosen this, though, what's going to happen is I'm just going to unscrew this this nut, which, by the way, could also be this small brass acorn nut here, depending on what guitar you have. In fact, now is a good time to show you guys one of the cool Stuart McDonald tools that if you do a lot of stuff with Gibson guitars, having a 5/16 driver on a long handle piece here will make your life easier. Whether you have a vintage one-piece rod or this style here with a removable acorn nut. Okay, and guys, I'm going to leave links in the description so that you can order these StewMac tools. Okay, all right. So you can see it did the exact same thing, and when you loosen the nut, it relieves all of the bow in the truss rod, and when you pull the nut off, well, as you loosen the nut, it just comes all the way off. Okay, so, and you can see there. Let's do this one more time. Let's put this on here and let's get it. People often wonder, like, well, how do I know I'm not going to break my truss rod? All right, so the nut is now snug on the truss rod, and I'm going to, let's turn this one full turn. All right, so that's one full turn. Now, as you can see, the rod is really bent here, okay? And we're not in any danger of anything breaking, okay? You can add, lubricant to the, it's floating around in my jig a little bit here. You can add lubricant to the nut if you want and help it keep from seizing. Generally, though, you don't need to worry about breaking your truss rod because, again, it's steel, and this brass nut will probably, I suppose you could break the threads on this, but don't sweat it, okay? All right, now I'm going to show you on the this style of rod that we use. This is a neat tool because you can let's see, you can turn the rod clockwise for me anyway, and what you will notice is that same action where it is bending putting an arch in the rod, kind of like making a frowny face, okay? But because this rod is attached, it's brazed onto the end here, I can turn this and loosen the rod, and rather than unscrewing, it will allow me to See how now it's got a kind of a smiley face in it? So it allows me to move the rod in two directions. There are some ways that very clever guitar builders have gotten around the not using or not having the ability to move the rod in two different ways. One of them, like I said, is the Paul Reed Smith rod, where they have right-hand thread and left-hand thread, and the rod can move back and forth, and you turn this captive nut and move it one way, move it the other way. So an even more elegant way to do that with a standard or the old school truss rod would be to do what Hamer did. They would use the old school rod. They'd put this in an arched channel, and they would preload the truss rod, bowing it up. You know what I mean? Putting that kind of frowny face on the rod and bowing it away from the string tension. Then they would level the fretboard, do all the radius, put all the frets in, etc. And if you needed the rod to come down a little bit like this, or the neck needed to have a opposite bow in it, what you would do is you would just loosen the rod. You could still tighten it more and get more tension this way, but you could also loosen the rod effectively while you'd be straightening the rod, and that would allow the neck to do its thing. So there's ways to get around that depending on what neck you have. However, adjusting a truss rod is no big shake. You might need a handful of tools. Like I say, Stu Mack has some good stuff here. This one is a nut, or I'm sorry, a driver for this acorn style nut, like on a Gibson. They've got one with an Allen wrench, an Allen key for like Fender style necks. All of our let's see. All of our TTG necks, let's get this in the picture here. All of our Texas Toast necks require a 4mm wrench, and you kind of slide this in and get it. It's hard to do when I'm not looking at it. You slide the wrench in and get it to fit in the key there, and it looks exactly like this. I don't know if you can see that. And then you can manipulate the truss rod and get it to straighten your neck or put bow in, depending on how you like to play. If you are like me and you want to know exactly what your fretboard relief is, Stu Mack has you covered there too with this fretboard relief gauge. Let me show you a little bit of what that looks like. The idea behind this tool is, one, that the frets are all level. Okay, so this presupposes the frets are level. And what you want to do is you want to balance this tool on across. You want all of the flats to be touching a fret. In other words, you don't want one of them, this one, to be in. Okay, so you want to have the point of contact on each end on a fret, as well as this plunger on a fret. And then you can look and see how much relief you have. You can do this with it strung up or not. So this one, I think I looked before, and it's a little bit off. So if we wanted this neck to be perfectly dead flat, we would need to adjust the truss rod. I like to have my fretboards be flat when I do setups, because I don't like any relief on mine, and when they leave the shop here, they're dead flat. If you like relief, you say I like 20 thousandths worth of relief. Well, this tool will get you there too, okay? So anyway, gang, don't be afraid to adjust your own truss rod. If you've got some, if you like a little bit of relief, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. But if you get too much, then it's going to be like, yeah, you really got to press these strings down here to get them to make notes at the frets. And of course, the higher they are, like say the truss rod is out of whack and needs to be adjusted. The higher the string is, the more you press down, the less likely you are to be in tune when you get to the actual fret. If you have to press down a quarter of an inch, I'm exaggerating. So anyway, gang, it's okay to adjust your own truss rod. It's not something to be fearful of. Adjusting your truss rod is something that every guitar owner should probably know how to do. You should at the very least have the tools to do it. And if you want to start doing guitar work yourself, investing in some tools like the wrenches from Stuart McDonald will be a lifesaver. And if you want to have all of your guitars set up exactly identical, a fretboard relief gauge like this will go a long way to helping you get to where all your guitars are exactly right. Or If a customer comes in, say you're one of those guys who I was teasing earlier in the video. If you're one of those guys and someone comes in and says, I want all my guitars set up like this one here, the holy, one true and holy sainted guitar, and then having the ability to go, okay, I need to make the relief at the whatever fret 30 thousandths or whatever it is. Then you can set all the guitars up that way. You can adjust the truss rods under string tension and get them all exactly perfect. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the video, this first video on how to make your guitar play great in 2024. So remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and please leave some comments. Let me know what you'd like to see for future episodes of Make Your Guitar Play Great in 2024. Until then, this is Matt at Texas Toast reminding you that life is short. You might as well have a cool guitar, and if you're so smart, start your own YouTube channel. That's what I did. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.